They're all saying nothing normal.
That's because we're live, Mel. Can you see? Well, we are. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, even. We've had one or two comments early on, I think. I don't know if anybody can. Yeah, we are live. 14 live, right? So good evening, everybody. If you can give us the, we've got nobody watching on Facebook, which is probably about right. But if you can give us the thumbs up on the YouTube link, that would be helpful, just to make it more visible. Give us the big like, everybody. Hello to Mr. Johnson, Dark Knight Detectorist, Blue Dickus Detects, Andrew Allen, Jim Black, the Dark Knight Detectorist, History Unearthed, and David Taylor from Yorkshire, who sometimes get mixed up with the many other David Taylors in the detecting world. And I think there's about 8. Wayne Heston King, how are you, sir? Somebody came on ranting about Nocta rules earlier on, which was a bit weird. Len Jackman, how are you? Dave Reed, all good to see you. Good to see you all. Good to see you all. We have got a big jump, actually, in Facebook group watchers. I think it went up about 11 in about 3 seconds there, which is good. I haven't done one of these live streams for probably, how long? Over a month? Couple of months? Got to be a couple of months. So I do apologise. We've just been that busy with Team Unearthed, the new Team Unearthed digs, and you name it, a whole host of different things has been going on. Ricky Shimmin, how are you, Ricky? Treasure Huntress, I hope you're well. Good to see you. Hello, David Dickinson as well. And hello from me in Salford, Chris Critch from Facebook. So lovely to see you all on this Sunday evening. Now, there is a number of things that we want to get through, I think. Scott, how are you, Scott? Lawrence Hartley as well. Jeff Block. Lots of people joining this live stream on a Sunday night, which is always encouraging to see. Imagine if we logged on and there was nobody on, which probably happens to 1 or 2 people, I guess. I think last time we had about 80 people was the most we had for a period of about half an hour, so we're not doing too bad at the moment for 42 people. Mike Richardson, how are you? So good to see you all. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all keeping fit and well, even though we've got low temperatures and a bit of winter hanging on. Warren and Sean Goble, all good to see you all. Mike Richardson, and I think I've said Mike Richardson, and of course Ryan Chapelhow. Now, some of you wonderful people may remember some time ago there was some new releases of metal detectors coming. So let me just put you in the picture. I usually do these live streams when there's something interesting coming down the road detecting wise, and this is no different to that. So we've got, just let me say hello to a couple of people. Detector Jim and family, hello. Lovely to see you on here. In fact, it's lovely to see all you wonderful people from all areas of the UK and beyond. We've got Europe, we've probably even got Australians and Americans on tonight, which is really encouraging. However, I don't know who's commenting on Facebook, guys, because I can't see the name, so it just comes up Facebook user. So this is what I see from Facebook. I just see that, so I'm not sure who that is, but good evening to you anyway. Andrew Allen, quick thanks for the fleece. It's been a godsend, absolutely. Them Sherpa fleeces are something else. They're on a different planet. They've kept me warm all winter. I'm glad they're doing the job, Andrew. Chris Critch. Yeah, I think it's Chris. Yeah, Terry. Yeah. Anyway, folks, we're up to 43 people. Good to see you all. So we usually do these live streams when there's something interesting coming down the road, detecting wise, and it's no different tonight for this one. So we've got a number of new detectors, folks. We've got a number of new detectors, which is a bit strange, seeing as though we can't get our hands on some of the new models that have been released recently. It seems a quite bizarre situation to be in, that there's another group of detectors coming down the line, both from Minelab and Nocta, which might even be here this time next week. I'm thinking possibly, if customs get the fingers out. I know there's problems with customs releasing certain detectors into the UK at the moment, but we're not far away. And I want to speak about, very briefly, the hype and the arguments that go around on social media about metal detectors, new releases of metal detectors. Now, you can imagine the situation if you were a manufacturer of metal detectors and you decided in your wisdom to release a batch of different metal detectors to suit different people in the hobby, price-wise, technical specifications, features, all that kind of thing taken into consideration. But price pretty much being one of the most important parts of the release, if you will. And I find it absolutely bizarre that people start slagging off manufacturers of detectors and saying things like, why are you bringing out more detectors when you've already got this, and this? But you've got to think about it from their perspective. If they can improve detectors, year in, year out, and it actually helps the end user, then you can't blame people for bringing out better detectors than what they've already brought out before. So, I'm a great believer of new technology and people moving forward, and the release of some of the new machines that are coming down the line fairly soon. One or two of them have caught my eye. And I think the Xterra Pro, which was a big surprise for me, actually, because the old Xterra range from Minelab were pretty much put on the shelf a number of years ago. They weren't bad machines, by the way. They were okay. They did the job. So to see the emergence of the Xterra Pro, which is coming very soon, it sort of like raised an eyebrow with me. I thought, what's that about? And then when I looked into the technical specifications and the features of the machine, I'm thinking, that's a pretty damn good machine for the money. Now you're talking, right? You're talking about, just let me say, Dirt Diggers UK. I think your name's Scott. I know Nocta in your head rule. You keep posting this up all the time, but there's no need for you to do it. I don't know if you get paid by Nocta for promoting Nocta, which is fine, but you don't have to keep telling people that Nocta rule. We know how good Nocta machines are, by the way. I find it funny that we had it last time on a live stream when people were coming from XP, Garrett, Minelab, Nocta, saying how good their machines were. All good machines, by the way. I haven't got a problem with any of the detectors, but we don't need to know that you think a certain metal detector rules. It's a bit odd, yeah. So the Xterra Pro that's coming down the line, I thought, what's the reasoning behind Minelab releasing that particular detector? I found it a bit strange. Why have they done it? And I looked into it, the spec, the features of the detector. Didn't know the price of the metal detector. I had no idea of what the price was of that particular machine. But then all of a sudden, the spec came out, and I'm thinking, that's a good machine. It's waterproof to 5 meters. It's wireless, or you can make it wireless. It's pretty much a shell of similar to an Equinox look. Slightly different color, interchangeable frequencies, and a beach mode and things like that. And then the price was released under 300 quid. And I'm thinking, that's cheap. It's a cheap machine. And it's going to be, hopefully, I'm not going to bang on too much about it yet without testing it, but by all accounts, looking at some of the YouTube videos doing the rounds in America, it always surprises me that the Americans get the metal detectors before the people in the UK and Europe do to test. However, that is just the way the manufacturers work. If I was leading some of the manufacturers, I'd be putting the metal detectors in the hands of the UK people first, because we are the treasure capital of the world, and we have the better soil conditions and the better finds, and the history. We're quite lucky, I think, to have all that at our disposal. So it would make perfect sense for the manufacturers to release the detectors first, I think, in the UK and possibly Europe, instead of it going to the Americans first. But that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. And I don't hold anything against the people that are testing the machines. I think they do a damn good job. But I was watching one or two of the videos being tested of this particular detector later last week, and I was quite surprised just how good it is. However, like I said, I'm not sure if it's going to be as good or better than people are making it out until we can get our hands on it and give it a test out on the unearthed test bed and out in the fields, giving it some stick. So that's an interesting detector. And of course, Nocta are releasing some simplex, Nocta simplex hybrids almost, which are going to be quite interesting for people. I think there's a slimmed down version as well. I don't really know too much spec wise yet on the Nocta simplex range, but you know, you can't knock the Nocta simplex for the price, and the performance of the detector is very good. So I should imagine that these detectors that are released from Nocta will be, you know, damn good machines. There's not many manufacturers out there now that make pure detectors. I think they're all pretty good. There's one or two that you can raise an eyebrow to, especially the price of them, but pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. I'm not sure why she's barking there, Mel, actually. So yeah, that's an interesting thing coming down there. So I will be trying my very best to put on social media and obviously YouTube some videos, films of these detectors in action. It probably won't be Nocta as much, but it'll certainly be the Minelab one, because obviously we can get our hands on the Minelab from the manufacturer fairly easily, and it only makes sense for us to do it as well, for obvious reasons. People need to know how good these machines are before they purchase, and there's no point in me giving people information, advice and guidance on detectors over the phone when I don't fully know how these metal detectors work. So yes, so there you go. Now, just talking about metal detectors before we start on other things, we are expecting some news on the Manticore and the Equinox 900 machines in particular sometime this coming week. Now we do understand that they are in the UK, so there's people on here now watching me that have got the names on the list for certain detectors, which is pretty normal. But one or two are getting quite frustrated, and I understand that. The frustration is mirrored by us here. There's nothing we can do about it. There's none of these detectors in the UK currently. Nobody can sell them. However, they have arrived. Customs have got hold of them. We're just waiting for them to be released. So there could be an update, at some point, one of the days through the week. And as soon as we know, you'll know. As soon as we know, you people will know. And by all means, keep messaging me, dropping me a message every couple of days, like I've been getting for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I know it's frustrating for you all, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that's another. Melanie's just reminded me. That's why Unearthed, us here at Unearthed, will never take money off people until the detectors have arrived. We do not take payments first, and then the frustration creeps in, and then you end up having to wait weeks and weeks and weeks for the detector to arrive. And we don't even take deposits for these detectors either. I'm a great believer of getting your hands on a machine that you've just paid for within that 24-hour period. But everyone's different, of course. So the one of the main reasons, Andrew Tiffin, yeah, you're right, Andrew. Actually, please arrive, Mr. 900, to feed my addiction. It should be quite. Sorry, I've knocked you off. It should be quite close. Like I said, they are here at Customs in the UK, Andrew. So we're just waiting for that process to go through, and then you, along with quite a few others, will be getting your hands on what seems to be initially with the 900 a damn good machine. I've been fortunate enough to find hammered silver every time I've gone out with the Nox 900. Not enough. I've not gone out nearly enough. But every time I have gone out with it, I I've picked up hammered coins. I've quite enjoyed the machine, especially in the all-tone setting. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it, but it's an incredible difference, I think, personally, from the sort of 600, 800. In fact, I think the 900 and 700 are both better machines than the 600 and the 800. My opinion, again, folks. Don't beat me up about it, but that's the truth of it. ML85 headphones are not available yet, Len. I'm just reading your comment there, sir. But they're coming. So the Xterra Pro machines, when they're released, we're going to try our best to provide wired headphones for now, and then we're going to wait for the wireless sets to come down the line sometime after. After that, let me just go through some of these comments. Looking for a waterproof machine to use on the beach and land when it's wet, so the Minelab will be looking. Yeah, no, if you watch some of the live streams going back 18 months, 2 years ago, for me, there is no reason why the manufacturers can't make all machines at least weatherproof. I mean, going over the top sometimes with the depth that some of these metal detectors can go, because you're not going to wade. People are not going to necessarily dive and wade with machines, but making them weatherproof is pretty much, for me, a basic function of a metal detector now. We've spent too long. I've spent best part of 40 odd years using metal detectors that weren't waterproof, So we've only really had the emergence of fully waterproof machines over the range of detectors by different manufacturers fairly recently, and there's still metal detectors out there that do not stand up in weather. And of course, here in the UK, we suffer greatly from adverse weather. So there you go. I'm just going to answer your comment there, Jim. What would you suggest for some? I think the game's changed now, in so much as there's a lot of really good metal detectors for people coming into the hobby. I don't necessarily like the idea of people coming into the hobby and going straight for the high-end machines, because I think they get a little bit overawed sometimes and a little bit confused with the menu systems on some. So if you look at the Vanquish range from Minelab and you look at the Nocta Simplex range from Nocta, they're very good machines for people to start off with. They're very easy, basic functions, very simplistic to use, lightweight, collapsible stems. They will find you things. And depending on what catches your eye price-wise, you can get a pretty damn good metal detector now for under 300 quid, which is something that you could never get for a long time, multi-frequency-wise especially. So it's a good detector. I would look at them. I mean, if the kids and the young kids, not to do a range of machines, Minelab do a range of machines that are pretty good. Quest do a pretty damn good range of machines, actually. I forgot about Quest, but Quest have got some good machines out at really attractive prices that children can actually use. So, it's a good thing. There's a lot of good stuff. And I think it's going to continue. I think we'll probably be seeing an emergence again of machines rolling out for the next 18 months, 2 years and beyond, which is good. Which is what it's all about. I think it won't be out for a few months yet, Len. The new Quest. I don't think that's going to be around yet for some time. However, by all accounts, it's a good machine. I'm just going to check how many people we've got. We've only got a handful. We've got about a dozen watching from YouTube. Sorry, we haven't. We've got about 40 watching from YouTube and about a dozen watching from the Unearthed group on Facebook. If you want to give us the thumbs up on both platforms, that would be fantastic. Now, just a brief talk, while we can, about YouTube in particular. There's a lot of people on here tonight that follow us on YouTube, and I think that's really kind. We have, over the last, last year or so, gradually, we've been gradually growing the YouTube channel. And the reason is it's a really good platform, the Unearthed YouTube channel, in particular, to showcase some of the Team Unearthed digs, so that we no longer have the Unearthed organized digs like we used to. They were becoming too stressful, I think, for me and Mel to organize. In so much as, we've got people, we had people wanting to get on board with the Unearthed organized digs for obvious reasons, because they see what awesome finds are being made every time we have a dig. And usually on the spectrum of finds, the finds that we make on our digs are the ancient type. We're not crammed full of Victorian and Georgian copper coins and artifacts and objects. It's more towards, you know, the Bronze Age, Iron Age, Roman period, which is fantastic. You know, we're not holding back just how good these digs are, but they are hard work. You know, it takes a lot of time and effort for me to do the research and liaise with the landowners and farmers to get these off the ground. So what we did, we changed the model of the unearthed organised digs to something called the Team Unearthed Dig. And that's enabled us to handpick the people, the good people in the detecting world to join us on, you know, a Sunday for an for a Team Unearthed Dig. And that way we can almost understand what sort of group we're playing with. There's no people coming in that we don't know that may cause problems like we've had in the past with people leaving holes, leaving a mess, wandering onto land that they shouldn't have wandered onto, even though they've been told about the boundaries. And I'm always much more comfortable if I know the people face to face and I meet with the people and I've got that element of trust where we can form the team. It's almost like a football team, if you will, where you've got the manager that organises the team that goes out on the pitch. Well, for us, it's changed over to that. Whereas, you know, we organise the team that goes out onto the fields to unearth history, and it's going to work. It really is going to work. And you know, I'm not going to kid myself that it's all going to be plain sailing from now on, because inevitably with groups of people, there's always going to be problems. But just remember, we're not commercial rallies. We don't put 60, 80, 100 people on 25 to 30 acres. It's always around about the 30 to 40 mark. And that's much more comfortable for us to manage and the landowners to get to grips with. So I think you'll see a lot of interesting, for those that follow us on YouTube, of course, I think you'll see a lot of more interesting finds being made with us this year and on to the next. Now, eventually they'll peter out at some point because we only really stick to the north. You know, we don't venture into other counties so much. But for now, at least for the next couple of years, you know, we've got a pretty damn good team and they all work together. And then what's really, and then some of you will agree with me that attend these digs that are commenting tonight, is the amount of people that know each other now and get on and openly go up to people and have a good crack by the cars, and they're showing people different elements of their detectors and, you know, getting on really well at morning, lunchtime and evening. I think it's terrific to see that. I know I've been on some organised digs, not many, but organised digs when I was younger, all over the country, as far down as Suffolk, you know, Norfolk, Lincolnshire, Wiltshire, you know, you name it. I've been quite well travelled in the detecting world, and some organised rallies, commercial rallies, can be quite, I found them quite intimidating sometimes when you go to certain events and nobody talks. It's very cliquey. There's small groups of people that won't talk to them and they won't talk to them, and you've got 150 people around you all of a sudden, all trying their best to detect over your patch. So it's good that we do things differently, and I think moving forward, people are going to understand why we do it for that reason. You know, we did last year, for those that are interested, we lost a rather large farm here in Cumbria, simply because somebody came on one of our digs, decided to wander onto some other land, leave a whopping great hole after they dug an item out, and left a 2 to 3 litre bottle of half-empty Coke by the hole, and decided to just walk off and thought that was acceptable. And of course, the first thing the farmers do is they talk to each other. So what they do then is contact me on a Monday morning, usually, because farmers are not daft. They don't hang about. And they walk on their land or drive on their land quite often. And of course, they came across the mess And then, you know, by 9 o'clock in the morning, they're on the phone to me. Now, I've just started work at that point, and the last thing I want on a Monday morning is an irate farmer shouting and screaming at me down my ear about the mess somebody had made. And of course, you know, I've got to take that on the chin and be very apologetic to the landowner. But off the back of that, you know, nearly 600 acres was lost. And I know for a fact that 600 acres of land would have held some really interesting items for us to find. So it only makes sense that you know the people that you've got coming on the digs and you trust the people to do the right thing. You know, I'm not saying we're absolutely perfect, because some of the holes on the unearthed organised digs can be a little bit messy at times. And I don't know who that is, because it's very difficult to walk around the people and see everybody digging at the same time. But it's about education in a lot of places. I think people think they're doing the right thing, but actually they're not. But so that's the change now. So you'll see us changing away from the unearthed organised digs over to the Team Unearthed Digs. And it's like I said, it's like-minded people that we know and trust and enjoy. And off the back of that, we're also starting to explore for the first time ever midweek digs. So we're having the first Wednesday midweeker coming up in the end of March. So that'll be interesting. We got a call off a farmer to say, listen, if you don't come on our land or his land now, you're going to lose the opportunity to do it, because it's changing hands. And obviously the grass is going to start growing at some point. And if it was this time next month, we probably wouldn't get on. So we've had to scramble around very quickly to put the first ever Wednesday Team Unearthed dig, which is coming up at the end of this month, which will be very interesting. Now, Wednesdays are usually Unearthed day off. Me and Melanie have a day off on a Wednesday, but that'll be a welcome change. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how that goes. And of course, if there's Team Unearthed members on here and people want to join us, you're more than welcome to come along on the Wednesday. More than welcome. David, too many people on big rallies now with interference, etc. The problem we've got, I think, is there's a lot of people out there without permission that have not been able to get permission. They've got a new detector. They're really raring to go to find the first hammered coin or the first bit of Roman or whatever it might be, but they haven't got that permission. So they rely on the rallies or the commercial digs to fill that gap. The problem you've got is some of the new or the newer commercial rally organisers don't really care how many people they let on. So they could have a patch of maybe, I don't know, for example, 55 acres, and they'll put 100 people on 55 acres. Now that's a lot of people on a fair amount of land, but that 55 acres can soon get swallowed up quickly. Now, if you're one of them 100 people, you actually find yourself dodging in between detectors. And it can be quite off-putting, because, that machine interferes with that machine, that machine interferes with that machine. I think it's a rather difficult thing that some of these commercial rally organisers, they need to keep their numbers at a decent level. But of course, it's all about money for them, you see. They're not really bothered about what you find, but what they're bothered about is how much money you're going to give them. Off the back of that, they don't really care where they go. So there's some land out there, for example, in the north that we've detected on before, and we've got these commercial rally organisers going on the same farms telling people it's virgin land. Now, we know we've been on there 20 years previous, 15 years previous, 10 years previous as private detectorists with just me, a friend and his friend, or whatever. And I think it's wrong, when people do that. I think it's wrong. Anyway, there you go. When are we next on telly? That's interesting. There is 2023. I think the last live stream that I did, I touched on. Do you know what there is around? For such a small little quiet area like we've got here at Goose Green, there's always someone with a dog barking outside. Have you noticed, Mel? I don't know if it's the moronic owners that don't care. Well, I can hear it. There's nothing more that annoys me than bad dog owners. Anyway. Well, I don't care particularly.
They're probably watching you and left the dog outside.
probably watching me unless the dog outside. Right, okay. Television-wise, so I think 2023 is going to be quite interesting because there was a number of avenues for metal detecting on television coming up. So, for example, people ask me quite often. In fact, I got asked this morning actually by message if the Great British Treasure Hunt would go to Series 2, and by all accounts, it probably will at some point. So, for people that enjoyed that first pilot and then the series, the good news for them is that there is going to be a Series 2 at some point. But also lurking around in the background, there's also a number of other potential television-related detecting episode series coming down the line. Now, I suppose the key to it all is how the production companies portray metal detecting. You know, is it going to be fun, relaxed? You know, let's get out there and see what we can find, or is there going to be an element of seriousness linked to it, where, you know, actually metal detecting is quite a serious hobby, and this is what people can find, and this is the metal detecting hobby in all its glory. So it's going to be, I think, this year and into 2024, television-wise, is going to be very interesting for metal detecting. I think there's a number of projects trickling down the line that people will find extremely interesting. Now, you're always going to get the people that don't like metal detecting on television, and that's absolutely fine. I can fully understand that, because they might not like the characters, they might not like the locations, they might not like the detectors that they use, they might not like the way the metal detecting show's made. But, you know, if you sit back as a neutral and you want to see good finds coming up out of the ground here in the UK or beyond, possibly, then, you know, would you rather watch that than something like Coronation Street or EastEnders or Match of the Day? So that's something for people to, I guess, work out themselves. So the answer is, I'm not sure when we're going to be out on television, but I think this year is going to be extremely interesting when it comes to television. Much more interesting, actually, than last year. And we did a lot on TV last year. So what we're going to do, we're going to see different things coming down the line very soon. When I say very soon, this year at some point. Now, the other thing is, I think people will find interesting on here, because we're talking about different topics now, but they're all based around the same theme, is green waste or metallic waste. Now, for a number of years now, green waste has been on the topic of my rants, I guess, on places like Facebook, YouTube, and other outlets as well. As many platforms that I could, I've tried my very best to stand on my soapbox without wobbling too much, and making people aware that this green waste problem isn't going away. Now, Melanie sometimes rolls her eyes at me with some of my rants about it, and it's not so much that I'm ranting about the topic of green waste, it's probably some of the language that I'm using now around it. But I think the interesting thing for detectorists is that I've been contacted. When was it, Mel? About 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I got a phone call just out of the blue from a lady who has a role, a role to play within UK British agriculture, and the conversation was based around different topics, and I managed just briefly to mention the word metallic green waste and the problems that UK farms and landowners are going to face at some point in the future, because rolling down the track is a major problem coming, folks. I can feel it. I can almost taste it. There's now going to be growing dismay and anger about just how much metallic toxic waste is being spread illegally on farmers' fields. The good thing about this phone call, which was pretty much a one-off, I think, it was almost like an out-of-the-blue phone call about British agriculture and farming in the UK. Now, anybody that knows me knows that I'm not a farmer. Me and Melanie are both part-time plastic L-plate sheep owners of a flock of sheep. But that's not, and we own some land, but that doesn't make us farmers. But what it does make us is aware of the things that are going on around us within agriculture. And as a detectorist, one of the things that we are very aware of is the growing threat of metallic waste. Now, here's the thing. This lady that contacted me about it, and I got the chance to speak to her about the problems that we're having, she was absolutely in shock. So you can imagine me dropping this bombshell on her to say, listen, are you aware of this situation? And she was completely oblivious to the threat of it. But off the back of that, it's enabled me to get a opportunity to speak some sort of meeting, some sort of, I don't know too much about it, some sort of agricultural soil producers, landowners conference, meeting, whatever it is, and I'm going to have a slot talking about the problems based around green waste. Now, that's a great opportunity, I think, for me to get the message out there to these people to say, listen, and then these are going to be clever people, folks. These are not going to be, rough and ready individuals that are just bouncing around agriculture for the hell of it. These are going to be quite influential people or links to influential people. And I'm going to get the opportunity in April, sometime in April. I think it's mid to late April. I'll have to look on my notes to talk about the situation, the dire situation of metallic waste. Now, we know, or some of us know, that the Environment Agency do allow a certain percentage of this waste to go through the screening that it goes through and ends up on farmers' fields. However, what they don't take into consideration is this small percentage that ends up going on to the fields grows by the year. So that percentage is then growing and growing and growing, and all of a sudden that 0.01% ends up being 5%, and then it goes on and on and on. Now, you're obviously listening to what I'm saying here, but that problem then becomes a major issue. So what they've created in their wisdom, but it's just typical government bodies, quangos, useless departments that don't really understand what's going on. What they don't realize is they've created a monster now that they can't control. So some of the farms here in the north, and this is where you come into it more than anything, and I'll be asking the question in about 5 minutes. Here in the north in particular, there's growing levels of green waste, keep using green waste, metallic toxic waste being spread on a farmer's land. And that's including, plastics and rubber on top of that. Now, we know plastics takes an enormous amount of time to rot down in the land. Rubber, however, would probably take just as long. Metallic waste will probably take just as long. You're probably talking thousands of years, if not hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, this is where the question comes, because they've already posed the question back to me about it, is green waste in every county of the country? Now, my answer to them, I jumped in pretty quick and I said, yes, it is. So I'm aware of green waste in these particular places. I'm aware of green waste in Lancashire, Cumbria, Northumberland, Yorkshire, Suffolk, Norfolk, Lincolnshire, Wiltshire, Northamptonshire, Dorset. However, I'm not actually, Cambridgeshire as well. I'm not Herefordshire yet. I'm not actually, I don't know at this point, and this is where some of you people come into it. I don't know if we've got levels of green waste in Wales, for example. I know it's in Scotland. Cornwall. Well, this is what I'm saying. It's all right saying they're not allowed to do it in Wales, but they're not allowed to do it anywhere, but they do it. What I'm saying is green waste in Wales? Is any of our Welsh friends on here? And is it in Devon and Cornwall? Now, Treasure Hunters has just said it's in Surrey, so there's Surrey. And I go back through these notes. So I'll go back to reference these counties that you're telling me to get a bigger picture of which counties have it in. So the Treasure Hunters have said Surrey. Dean McAvenny said Leicestershire. Paul said Hampshire. Don Norfolk, Cambridgeshire, Lincolnshire. Yeah, I'm aware of them, Rob, unfortunately. Jeff Collins is saying it's on the Isle of Wight. And that's interesting. There's your first link there. There's my first information. I've experienced it in North Wales. So the Welsh have got it. Shropshire, 2. Don Shepherd saying it's getting worse in Scotland. So pretty much, certainly areas of the south of South Yorkshire. Now, it certainly tells me, and I know people are going to start telling me, let me just see. I know people are going to continue to tell me where it is. You know, Isle of Man will be next. Ireland. So it'd be interesting to see if the Irish have got it. The problem we've got, we know it's widespread. So it's a practice. It's a practice, he says, wobbling his glasses about. It's a practice that's copied right throughout the country, which is a worrying trend. So it's gone probably the Midlands, for example. We use the Midlands as an example. It might have started off in the Midlands where it's heavy industry and it's grown outwards. It's moved north, east. But the problem is it's on the increase and there's no way of being able to get this off. It's bigger than it's just, let me just see that there, what Andrew Allen said. I was told that a lot's coming from Council Green Bin Service where people are mixing rubbish. It probably is, Andrew, but the main culprits seem to be the waste contractors and the recycling plants. So when you've got people that are bringing in waste from skips, for example, so skip companies that are linked to agriculture and composting, right? Where they're active around towns and cities, then you usually find that the farms within that 10-mile radius, for example, are the farms that have got it on the worst. They've been contacted by some of these companies to ask if they can spread it on their land, right? And that's what's happening. So, for example, when I had a meeting, I actually had a meeting in the middle of a cold, wet field in Cumbria with a group of farmers talking about green waste, right? And they told me, this particular group of farmers, this is only a month ago. This is only less than a month ago. That they told me that they don't get contacted by some of these waste companies because they're too far away from the recycling plants. So, for example, if you're on the doorstep of some of these recycling plants, chances are you'll either have it on your land or they've contacted you as a farmer or a landowner to get it on. The further that you're away from these recycling plants, the less chance you've got it on. So there's an area here in Cumbria, a corridor almost, that's quite remote, that hasn't got any green waste on it. And the more we bring it to landowners' attention, the less likely it's going to be spread on their land anyway. Because once it's on, they ain't going to get it off, right? They ain't ever going to be able to go down the organic route to grow crops and vegetables and food for the country, which is probably going to be on the increase. You know, these farmers are going to be forced to grow more and more produce for obvious reasons. With metallic green waste spread all over those fields, they can no longer go down that organic route, right? So that's a problem. But the bigger problem is the feeding animals, livestock on fields that have got green waste spread on, metallic green waste, and also more worryingly, or just as worryingly, the growing crops. for animal consumption and human consumption in amongst it. Now, I could take any amount of governmental bodies, people linked to agriculture and the government, and some of these high flyers that just spend their lives sitting in the office behind a computer, not doing a great deal of anything else. I could take them to a number of fields where it would probably take a monumental effort and cost to get this stuff off the land, right? So it would probably, I shudder to think how much effort it would take for people to scrape off the top 10 inches, for example, of soil, right? And then dispose of it, because you've got to worry when they take it off and they dispose of it, will eventually down the line somewhere come back on the land. You know, they have to dispose of it in a correct way. Where are they going to dispose of it at? Where are they going to dispose hundreds and hundreds of tons of soil with contaminated waste in it? They can no longer use the UK countryside. Taking your metal detectorist's hat off, right? Take your hat off as a detectorist for 1 minute, right? None of us detect. None of us detect. I don't detect. You don't detect. As an environmental issue, that we're worried about what our children and our, our parents, our friends, our families eating food that's grown, within some of these contaminated fields. It surely cannot be right that we're having to be subjected to this. Now, if it takes some hairy-arsed metal detectorist up in Cumbria that runs a company called Unearthed to say this is wrong to people, well, why isn't anybody from, higher up the ladder within the agricultural community saying, hang on a minute, this is wrong? We got largely ignored by the Environment Agency when we brought that up to them. We got largely ignored by the Green Party, who are pretty useless, actually. We got largely ignored by the Friends of the Earth, right? So there's 3 major companies there that you would think would sit up and say, when I said to them, this is going to be as big as the plastics in the sea situation, none of them seem to be interested in, we haven't got the money to do a campaign on that. We're too busy involved with the plastic bottle problem in the seas, because people go abroad to foreign countries and they see all the, the plastic in the seas washing up against the side of the piers, and people want it out, which I can understand. I've got no problem with that. But you cannot turn a blind eye to the situation that's happening on UK farmland. Now, here's the problem, right? And I'll come back to some of your comments on here very soon. Actually, I'm just getting this out. The problem is with green waste or metallic waste, you can't see it. We can see it for an initial period when it's spread on for the first time. So it stays on the surface of fields, whether that be pasture fields or ploughed agricultural arable fields, right? But after a period of time, that waste disappears. So you're driving past these beautiful green fields in the north, south, east, or west, or wherever you are, looking at that fantastic, beautiful countryside, not knowing there's literally tons of metallic waste growing in the fields underneath that grass or that crop, because it's out of sight, out of mind. It's the same old problem, out of sight, out of mind. The only time you see it here in Furness, for example, in Cumbria, is when the certain farmers plough their fields ready for the next line of crops to go in, and the sun comes up at a certain angle and the whole field glints with colour, usually silver colour, reflecting off the aluminium that's spread on the surface. And that's probably the only time you see it. And then obviously the sun goes down, disappears. The crops are growing pretty quickly because the weather's warm, the soil temperature's warm, the crops come up and hide it again, and everybody pretty much forgets about it. That's your problem with metallic green waste, is because it's out of sight, out of mind. Now, if you could drive past these fields and you could see all these tons and tons of scrap aluminium, plastics and rubber that's been spread all over UK farmland, there would be hell to pay, because Doris and her husband, who are going out for a Sunday lunch, would be waving their stick at it and the family of 5 that are driving down the M62 into wherever, and they come across fields and fields and fields of metallic green waste spread all over the place. The first thing they do, they go to the local MP and bring it up. Now, there's a lot of good, really good people in the hobby of detecting that have tried this problem, including myself, raising the awareness of this problem. And it's a very, very difficult issue. However, there might be a door that opens next month for this conference, or this chance that I've got to speak to these people about the threat, the serious threat of metallic waste. Now, there is something called, I think, and somebody will put me right, I guess Andrew Allen will know about this possibly, but there's something called, I'm sure there's something called the Soil Association. Now, they're interesting in so much as they obviously look at I guess, without doing my homework on it, so I've got to be careful what I say, but I guess that the quality of soil in this country is paramount to their job, to their organization. So I just wonder what these people would think if I took them for a day's detecting and I collected a bucket full of metallic waste, including aluminium scrap, needles, batteries, rubber, plastic, and a whole host of other hinges, doorknobs, window frames, catches, you name it, spread all over the fields, and I presented it to them on their lap and said, that's just a very, very small window of what's on 17, 18, 19 of these farmers' fields here in Cumbria, Wiltshire, Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire, Norfolk, Suffolk, the list goes on and on. So it'll be interesting on the next live stream, because this next live stream, which will be airing sometime in April, if that meeting is before that, I could give you guys some interesting examples of it. The problem we've got is farmers are also our friends. Remember, without the farmers and landowners, and by the way, we're jumping up in numbers now, so my rant might be getting out there a little bit. We've got about 70 odd watching, mainly from YouTube actually, which is good. If you can give us a like on YouTube and like on Facebook, that would be encouraging, because it'll then make the channel a little bit more visible, or this particular stream. The problem we've got, and you all know this, and you all know where I'm coming from, is farmers and landowners are our friends. I've got many, many farmers that are friends. I've got farmers that I can walk in. If I was driving somewhere tonight and my car broke down, I could literally walk into one of the farms and they put me up for the night. And that would happen in 10, a dozen more landowners out there that would have that sort of hospitality. And that's how good I get on with them. They're very, very nice people. They're down-to-earth people. They're salt of the earth. They're the sort of people I want to mix with. They talk my language. They're nice, genuine people. The problem we've got is we can't be seen to be causing a problem for the landowners and the farmers that don't know it's on their land. There's farmers and landowners out there that have no idea that they've got this horrendous metallic waste on their fields. However, there is some that do know they've got it on, and that could cause issues. But we can no longer, we all have to agree, actually, we all have to agree that it can no longer continue to go on. Now, if I got hold of the chief executive of the Environment Agency and said, listen, mate, you're coming with me. Whether you like it or not, you're coming with me. You jump in your rather posh company car, probably electric, and follow me to some fields. And if I waved my detector around on some of these fields and I dug up the waste that was inside that soil, there would be absolute hell to pay. There'd be shock. There'd just be absolutely gobsmacked. But it shouldn't take, right? Shouldn't take a hairy-ass detectorist like me to be shouting from the rooftops about the situation with green waste. Now, we could actually really get carried away with the situation with green waste and really go into the depth of it. And I'm sure, right, that some people on here will agree with me when they say I'm finding, especially around here, I'm not linking it to green waste and metallic waste, but I think the world itself that I know, that I understand, and that I live in is becoming poorly. There's more and more people now getting ill. There's more and more people out there getting poorly with whatever they're getting poorly with. God love them. You know, how hard would it be linking, right, this rise of metallic toxic waste in cropped arable fields? How hard would it be linking that to human health? You know, I'm absolutely positive that this cannot be good for the population. And you know, I'm looking at some of these questions now that are coming up. I know you're all pretty shocked about what I'm saying to you, but it's the truth. You know, it's the truth because you've been on the fields where the green waste is. I always remember, for example, going onto a field in Lincolnshire, South Lincolnshire. Where was it? Oh, there was an abbey there. There's an abbey down in South Lincolnshire somewhere. Somebody will come up with where it is. And the farmer had literally just ploughed and flattened off the fields that we were going to detect on. Swine's Head, near Swine's Head, it was. Around the edges of the field, the amount of green, metallic, and plastic waste was unbelievable. It was that bad that as detectorists, we just drove past it and said, we ain't going on there. We ain't going on there. Now, they were growing crops there for human consumption. And surrounding that field, there was a housing estate that had just been built. So there were new builds where families and people were, people were just living their lives, I guess. But with all this toxic, horrible waste going in. And at that point, I knew it was a human problem rather than a detectorist problem. I mean, Jerry comes on with a good point, actually. Why he has to call himself Biggest Dickus, I don't know, but only he knows that. But they would only say you are bothered because of your hobby. How many would be asked if they weren't detectorists? The problem you've got there is the people wouldn't be asked if they weren't detectorists because they wouldn't know about it. Detectorists know about it because we wander on the fields with it on. So we're bringing it to the attention of people. Who else wanders on fields digging it up? Not many people, really. But taking your detectorist hat off as a human being, do you really want your kids eating food that's grown on crops coming out of green waste fields? No, I don't think you do. Don't think you do. And I'm no environmentalist, by the way, folks. You know, I'm not. I'm not on the books of Greenpeace or the Green Party, God forbid. But as a normal human being, I don't think it's right that we should be allowing these skip companies, these recycling plants, and these pike. No, that's right. If you had an allotment, exactly, absolutely, Melanie. Melanie's just come up with a good point. If you had an allotment where you grew your own food, you wouldn't necessarily go on that allotment where you're growing your own food and tip a load of metallic waste in amongst all the raised beds. I mean, Dave Moran, friend of mine, Dave, good lad. Got a lot of time for Dave. He puts up a really good point here. It's not just the metal, it's the kitchen units containing melamine and a myriad of glues that are poisoning the land, the crops, and the animals. I know for a fact that that we don't even know about, that we're not experts talking about. But if you watch back 2 months ago, the green waste video that I did way back in February, where I just got onto a new patch of land to detect, and I found to my horror that a day before that these vehicles had been on, heavy duty commercial vehicles, opening their backs of their wagons, right, and spreading it on, then driving over it. Now, I knew for a fact that there's some stuff in there that I've never even seen before, but it reminded me very much of a house that had been demolished, right? An old house to make way for what? New houses? I don't know. But it just reminded me of a house that had just been demolished and then spread on the fields. because there was bits of plaster. There was nails by the ton. There was bits of radiators, bits of plumbing equipment, bits of boiler equipment, boiler parts. Literally almost like the demolished a housing, an old house or a block of old houses or a terrace of old houses or whatever, and then mashed it all up and put it on the farmer's fields. It's just a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. The only way I could see it stopping is relying on detectorists to get it off. Now, will you imagine what sort of job that would be to remove the green waste, the metallic green waste off a field? You'd need an army of detectorists lined up, ready to dig it all out for the greater good. Take your lifetime. Never going to work. You'd clear one field, it'd take you months probably, and the cost would be astronomical, but it wouldn't be as astronomical as it would be if some of these recycling firms, to get them to remove it, because they'd have to scrape, like I said earlier, they'd have to scrape at least the top 6 inches, if not more, of the topsoil off and remove it. Now, you imagine what sort of job that would be, off acres and acres. 25-acre field's a big field. You try mowing a 25-acre field, you know how big it is. Or you try running around a few times of a 25-acre field, you know how busy it is. So you imagine removing the green waste from a 25-acre plot. It's a lot of land. So, the problem's there. And it should be our duty now, I think, as detectorists, to start saying, listen, it's a prickly subject to bring up with a landowner as well. So going back 10 years ago, I put a small group of detectorists on some land, beautiful area down by a beautiful river, typical British countryside, beautiful green grass, hills, everything else going for it, wildlife all over the place, only to find that every field had metallic green waste in it. But when I brought it up to the farmer, in particular, who was a friend of mine, he was disappointed that we'd found it. He didn't know about it. And he said, well, how do I get it off? I said, well, we've got a bit of it off for you now. We've got bags of it in our fines pouches. Were bulging of this horrible chipped aluminium stuff and other bits. But that was only 5 detectorists removing, I don't know, 5 pound in weight of green waste. There was probably tons of it. And I mean tons. I don't mean tons as in hypothetical. I mean tons of it. How do we get it off? I mean, John French, good friend of mine is John, a lovely man from Suffolk, and he's saying, well, we're only seeing the metal. God knows what else is mixed in. And it's absolutely right. As humans, we're pretty much treated as almost like we're almost treated as some of the agricultural livestock, aren't we? It doesn't matter. You don't need to know about that. As long as you're getting your carrots and your turnips and your spuds and you're eating it, we may as well all go back and eat. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? So, on one hand, I do apologise for making this sound like a rather glum Sunday night rant, but if we don't stand up and start saying, listen, this can no longer continue, and of course, money. You wave that wedge of money in front of most people, and they're going to take it with energy. So these recycling plants, I'm going to, because I'm not going to label all recycling plants as being bad people. These rogue recycling plants, these almost like they've got the pikey mentality, don't really care. They don't care what shit's going on in the fields. They don't care. Do not care. As long as they can dispose of it, they don't care. They're the problems. They come with that mentality that I'm all right, Jack. Our generation will be all right. I'm sat behind a lovely 5-bedroom detached house with 1/4 of an acre of garden off the back of my business ventures as a rogue recycler. But I'm all right. My kids are all right because they eat pot noodles. So I'm all right. So what happens in the countryside and the crops and that ain't going to work. So, and I've spoken about this many times, what Rob's saying now, you know, we are probably at some point going to see the emergence of green waste digs, where we have organised digs to remove green waste. Now, as a detectorist, would you want to spend all day with numerous buckets around a field with green waste going in? And you only have to look on the Unearthed website, our Unearthed website now, to see there's a green waste link on there now. So there you go. It's a rather depressing situation that we're in. You know, 100 years from now, I won't be here. You lot that are watching this tonight, you ain't going to be here. But it's what we're going to leave behind is going to be here. It's going to be a horrendous situation. I tell you, I'm glad I won't be here in 100 years. As a detector, could we not get enough signatures that the question has had to be asked in Parliament? If some of you will remember me putting the petition up, Melanie remembers, didn't you? I got, how many names did I get? Hundreds. Got hundreds and hundreds of names. And I put it through the online petition route. And he kept on knocking it back, John. They kept on knocking it back and they kept on putting brick walls. I didn't do this properly. Well, why make it so difficult in the first place? I'm putting a petition of names together about green waste. I had hundreds and hundreds of names.
It's because of what you called it, green waste.
It's because I called it green waste. Yeah, it wasn't the right term. And then they started coming back with little technicalities. So then I got stopped for doing it. But the window, the chance, the opportunity is coming next month with this mini conference thing. Now, there's going to be difficult for people to listen to because there'll be people in that conference or in that meeting, right, that are going to know about it. And there's going to be some red faces. I'm absolutely positive that there'll be people out there knowing about it. And I'll be seen as being a pain in the ass. That's the problem you've got. You can, Mel. You can say. Well, I've said it, haven't I? I've not said any bad language, Mel. So how do you think? You know, what are your thoughts? I mean, you know, we asked the question about 20 minutes ago about people giving me some examples of where it is, and that added to the list of counties that have already got the green waste on. You know, because you've got to remember, it's not just, you know, also you've also got to think about some of the animals that have to feed in amongst some of these green waste fields. You know, you wouldn't.
Doing the probe on the cow when it goes,
yeah. Some of the livestock had it in the stomachs, and the pinpoint probes were actually picking it up in the cow's stomach, weren't they? I mean, how horrendous is that? I mean, just good God, get a grip. Very nearly swore then. I don't know who this is, but I just had the misfortune of putting up a flat pack unit, and I can say I've identified nearly every item in there from finds in the field. Scary how much must be buried out there just because many items are in these kits. Very true. So it's a good idea about the green waste, actually. I mean, if you look on the Unearthed website, like I said earlier, you'll see a green waste link on there. That's been on there for some time. So there is progress. But the problem you've got, you're going to come across some undesirable people. If you know, I'm trying to blow the lid off this, and I know for a fact that there's going to be people out there mightily peed off with me for doing it. And they're not nice people. They're undesirables, folks. Believe me. These road recycling plants are not to be. Some of the people that work in them are not to be messed with. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? You know, do a green waste dig at the local paper down, see if you can go to a major paper. The problem is you've got to then find the farmer and landowner that doesn't know they've got it on and are willing to let you on to do that. That's the problem you've got. That's the issue. Is finding that one farmer that you've got to say, you know what, I don't want this on my land. Get on here now, get it off of me, show it. But I tell you what, there'll be someone out there with it on that doesn't want it on. Just like there was in Leeds. The Leeds farmer that had it spread on his land by a contractor that didn't want it on. So he got, I think the Environment Agency in the end actually acted and got the contractor fined. And also the contractor had to take it off. It cost him hundreds of thousands of pounds way back 10, 15 years ago. It'll be millions now to remove that. Millions of pounds. Anyway, folks, so it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a difficult one. It's a very, very difficult one. But we're already down the road now of the door's open. The door's creaked open. We've walked through the door and we're going down that corridor. So at the end of the day, there's not a great deal. We can't walk backwards and shut the door and forget about it because it's just getting worse and worse. But, you know, I think over the next 10 years, I think there's going to be some, next decade, I should say, some very, very interesting conversations going on and some real action. I can just feel it. But you do not want aluminium on your fields, do you not? I mean, was aluminium not linked to Alzheimer's and what's the other one? Alzheimer's and dementia. Alzheimer's, dementia. There was a link with that. Now, of course, we can never prove it because we're not clever enough to prove it. We haven't got the tools necessary to prove that this horrendous stuff causes dementia and Alzheimer's. But I'm pretty sure if you looked at the stats that you would see that particular disease or that illness on the increase. Motor neuron disease. This is the sort of things, these cancers and these horrible ailments, you know, wouldn't it be horrendous to find out that we're actually killing ourselves because of these processes that are going on? There you go. Right, shall we, what should we talk about next? Because we've got about 3/4 of an hour left. And like I said earlier, you know, what we've done here is we've picked up on a particularly prickly subject. You know, it's a difficult subject to talk about, and it's a bit grim. It's a grim, really grim subject, but it's got to be talked about. Now, I know if you looked at the latest Digging Deep magazine from the NCMD, actually, the NCMD had a little quarter of a page. I think it was a quarter of a page or half a page write up about green waste, which is encouraging. You know, it's a start. It's an awareness raising start, but we've all got to do, you know, much more about this situation. Here in Furness ourselves, where we've got many acres of farmland around us, you know, there's some of these farms around here that have got a lot of green waste spread on them, a lot of metallic waste that are absolutely completely ruined. You know, their forefathers that owned these farms and turned, you know, a lot of the woodland into arable or pasture fields for livestock, you know, would be turning in their ancient graves to find out that these ancient farms all over the country have just been turned into dumping grounds, you know, because a lot of farmers and a lot of landowners going back in time had a lot of pride about their particular acreage that they looked after, whether it be 25 acres, whether it be 5 acres, whether it be 500 acres. For them to know that their fields are being filled with horrendous amounts of waste they'd be absolutely turning in the graves. Now, the university, there's going to be some people watching this and probably grimacing what I'm going to tell you next, even though I was just going to come away slightly from the metallic waste issue. A university did do a study over the northeast where they were actively asking people to come forward and talk about their green waste, metallic waste experience. And I think, if I remember rightly, that they went to a conference where there was a lot of detectorists there and stood on the stage and openly talked about it. And a lot of the detectorists that were some of you people might have even been there. Some of the detectorists that were in the audience were openly against them doing it. So it got shut. Now, rather than the detectorists to say, well, you know, actually, yeah, you know, you've got a point here, they were actually saying, no, farmers are our friends. We can't do this because we're going to lose permission. Farmers are going to think this. Farmers are going to think that. Landowners are going to be thinking that we're against them. But what they didn't think is that if a farm's got green waste on it, you can't detect on it anyway. You've lost that farm completely anyway. You're not going to go on it. So they did the university did do a study on it, and it was in some of the old detective magazines, the information in there, how to get in touch with these people, but it fell flat on its face, I think, because they come up against a little bit of opposition against certain quarters of the detecting community and probably someone else. So there you go, folks. You know, it's a very, very, very difficult subject to talk about. You know, and you know, the other thing is as well is metallic waste isn't just on farmers' fields either. It's now encroaching and creeping into the beaches. Now, that again is a concern. Where is it coming from? Is somebody dumping it out to sea and then it's making its way? Because aluminium's that light, it'll roll on the bottom, you remember, until it comes to the shore. There's hundreds and hundreds of tons of aluminium, scrap molten metal particles on the coastal road in Furness. So if you take a detector down there, you'll find bin bags full of it if you wanted to continue to detect. That has come from somewhere. That has come from some metallic process, and it's actually in the sea. And we only know that because we're detectorists, and we go down there occasionally to detect and find it. Has it come off the land where the erosion's been and ended up in the sea? I don't think so. There's something bigger going on. But again, I can't prove it. How do you prove a little bit of molten metal, aluminium malted metal? How do you prove where that's come from? People say, oh, that come from barbecues on the beach. Well, how many people have had barbecues? 100,000 people. It's too much of it. Anyway, moving on. But you know, if any questions come up, we can still answer it. So far, do you think current metal detectors are getting too expensive? I know there is budgets to meet most, just top end seems beyond most people's reach. It's a very good question. A very, very good question. Now, I see a lot of metal detectors coming on the market now. Multi-frequency, for example, or interchangeable frequency detectors coming on, where in the past you were paying a lot of money for them. So if I wanted to get my hands on a multi-frequency detector in the past, I'd end up having to pay upwards of £1,000 or more. That's changed with the emergence of things like the Vanquish, which is a very good machine. It's a multi-frequency machine. You can buy one of those for as little as 229 quid. You can use it on land, beach, pretty much wherever you want to go. That technology in there, in the past, you would have ended up having to pay a premium for it. Multi-frequency wise, putting that aside, if you look at some of the top end machines that are coming out now, they are very expensive, and it'll only be a matter of time, I think, before that expensive price tag hopefully pays dividends for the people that have bought the detectors. However, I see it from both sides. I see, I'll give you an example. So when the Manticore came out or was released, the price of the Manticore, for example, from Minelab, people were going, whoa, that's expensive. That's an expensive detector. Whoa, that's too dear. I can't afford that, which I understand. A lot of people can't afford it. You know, times are hard. People's budgets are stretched. But when I say to them 10 years ago, there was a detector that Minelab brought out that was even more expensive than that, people go, oh, yeah, you're right. The CTX was more expensive than the Manticore. Now, for me, and this year will tell you that, I think if you put the Manticore alongside the CTX, I think the Manticore would come out on top as a detector. Now, if anybody's out there using CTX and says to me, no, it's not, I understand that. That's my opinion. My opinion is the Manticore is a much better detector than the CTX. Not massive amounts of better, but better. And it's cheaper than what the CTX was. So the argument there is, well, actually, they're bringing out machines that are actually cheaper than they were 10 years ago as a premium high-end machine. Then the argument sort of falls flat on its face a little bit. But I do see an emergence of low-end machines that are very, very good in performance, such as the Nocta Simplex and the Minelab Vanquish machines, and the very soon to come Xterra Pro. You know, you're talking these machines under that 300 quid barrier. You know, we used to buy machines in the 80s for 300-400 quid, and they were nowhere near as good as these. So we've got to put it into that sort of perspective. But there is a common myth out there that you've got to buy high end to get the best out of the hobby, and you don't. You can get, I'll be quite honest with you. I've picked up that Minelab Vanquish that Melanie's got, the 440, and I've used it on I've used it on fields that I've literally battered in the past just for a couple of hours messing around, and I found some, surprisingly deep coins and artifacts that I must have missed with other machines. And I'm talking a metal detector that's under 300 quid, and it's dead easy to use. So you can get a really good detector now for not peanuts, because still 300 quid's a lot of money, but in that low end bracket. Ricky says Aldingham Beach, and he's right. Aldingham Beach. If anybody Googles where Aldingham is, it's one of the only place names in the Furness area that's linked to the Romans. I think it's the Aldi bit, if I remember. And of course, it's got the old ancient church down there. The Saxons have been down there. The Romans have been down there. However, the beaches along that particular stretch are absolutely strewn, and I mean strewn, with aluminium. Now, that's come from somewhere. That aluminium has come from some process. I'm absolutely convinced that somebody's gone out to sea on a boat or a ship and dumped it. Where else does it come from? It's absolutely stacks of this aluminium, malted aluminium metal all over the beaches. Can anybody tell me where that's come from? It's just too much to think it's come from the, it can't have come from the fields because it's been melted. The stuff you find on the fields, it's got that black grey look about it, but it hasn't been through extreme heat to make it all melted. The stuff on the beaches here is melted stuff. It's mental. And Ricky also says that detecting beach Jurassic Coast near Lyme Regis full of metallic waste. See, they're using the countryside and the beaches as dumping grounds, and it's wrong. And it's the animal that is the worst on the planet when you look at it. It's the human, good old human. I don't care what, it's just mental, isn't it? Just mental. The day is to the same. They have now issued a lighter version to keep the loyal buyers coming back. Yeah, it's a very difficult one with detectors, isn't it? I mean, I'm all for the manufacturers. I think it's great. And somebody like our friends that buy metal detectors from us and keep a roof over our heads, for the emergence of new detectors coming out, it can only be good for us as a business. We're selling metal detectors that people want to use out in the fields and find things with. What I don't agree with necessarily is revamping and rehashing old machines to make them look new constantly. I've got to see improvements in features, in performance, and price. It's very interesting actually, Jason. Yeah, the Xterra Pros can use the Knox coils, which is really interesting. I didn't know that until last week. Didn't know. So I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that when the first Xterra Pro comes through the door, it's going to be in my hands, because that'll be an ideal for me. I think it'd be an ideal backup. I used to like single frequency machines. Let's talk about single frequency machines for a minute. So lots of people say you've got to buy the best. You've got to buy multi-frequency. I understand people loving multi-frequency machines because I use a multi-frequency machine. I use a multi-frequency machine because I can use it on all terrain, and it can cope with the salt on the sand when it's wet, and it can cope with the mineralization of fields. For me, if you use them correctly on deep pasture, some, not all, but some, and I have to say this, some of the multi-frequency metal detectors are much deeper and much more responsive than single frequency detectors, right? And I know this because I've seen them in action. I've detected much longer than most people without sounding patronizing. So if we go back to that old nutshell of the unearthed hoard in 2020, where we used up to 7 or 8 different metal detectors, there was only one type of multi-frequency metal detectors that would hit them deep hammered coins. Okay. Everything else wouldn't touch them. The single frequency metal detectors that I used could not touch these coins. Some of the multi-frequency metal detectors that were out at the time couldn't touch those coins. So multi-frequency for me is brilliant. However, before I started using multi-frequency machines regular, I was using single frequency detectors, and I found some of my best ever metal detecting objects, coins, and artifacts with single frequency detectors, such as the Technetics T2, Fisher F75, Gold Max Power from XP, and the classic Technetics G2 Plus. Now, they were single frequency metal detectors that you could probably change the kilohertz very, very slightly if you did a channel change, but you couldn't alter the kilohertz setting they were on. So it might have been at 12, might have been at 13 kilohertz, might have been at 20 kilohertz. They were stuck. But the thing is with single frequency detectors, they're very accurate. They're very fast. I find them very accurate. I find them very fast. I love using them. I've always enjoyed using a single frequency detector. Let's not fall into the bracket of being snobs and thinking that if you're not using if you're not using a multi-frequency detector, then your detector's rubbish. Some of the best ever metal detecting finds on the planet have been found by single frequency detectors, folks. With the emergence of the Xterra Pro, not only is it a single frequency detector, but it's an interchangeable frequency detector. So I can then, if I decide to use it on 15 kilohertz, I can use it. Now, 15 kilohertz is a good setting for a lot of single frequency detectors. People that used to use the Garrett AT Pro, I think that was at 15 kilohertz, a bit of a heavy relic as a machine, but people used to find lots of things with it. And then you've got this sort of 10 kilohertz threshold, and then you've got sort of 8 or 5. 5 is quite deep on copper coins and artifacts that have got some depth to them, maybe not necessarily as sensitive to the smaller silver items, etc., etc. But what I'm saying is the versatility of this machine is going to be pretty good. In a waterproof shell, you can make it wireless, happy days. So the reason why I'm going for an Xterra Pro, because I think at some point when I'm detecting through this season, I can go into the back of my car or the back of my pickup, pick up this machine, leave the Knox 900 or whatever else I'm using at the time, take it out into the fields and feel perfectly at home using that detector to find me the coins and artifacts that are out there. Dead easy. And I think it'll be a really, really good machine. I like the shape of the coil. I like the design. However, I haven't tested it yet. So if I take it out on the unearthed test bed, I'll give it a rundown on my lower fields that I've hardly detected on at all, and I don't find a great deal and I don't enjoy the experience, then it's not for me. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be a cracking detector. The Detectorist magazine. Now, the Detectorist magazine was a real winner for us in so much as we took a lot of pride in doing it, and I was very proud of the Detectorist magazine. However, it cost a lot of money to produce, and it was a lot of the time consumption in getting the articles together, as you can imagine, was horrendous. When you've got so many different things on, balancing everything out was difficult. And of course, there was some glitches with the Detectorist magazine. Now, if some of you are not aware of the Unearthed Detectorist magazine, you can go onto the Unearthed website and you can read the past copies. There's maybe a dozen copies on there of that particular magazine, that e-magazine. So it was costly to produce. And, you know, if Unearthed were swimming in money and we had millions at our disposal, then the Detectorist magazine wouldn't be a problem. The problem we've got to do is find the balance of making it viable, but making it cost worthy as well and making it value for money. So it's not disappearing completely, but we are going to have to rethink it and revamp it, I think. Melanie's right what she said. We've got that much going on. We just don't have time. My first hammered coin came up with a Vanquish 540, and that's for Ryan. Agreed. Good machines. Just good machines. My daughter has a 440. She finds everything I can find. Yeah, no, they're just good. Just easy good. Easy to use. So yeah, there's, you know, there's an argument to say, wow, some of these metal detectors are too much money. And you know, I understand where people are coming from, especially where budgets are tight. But where people can't afford the flagship high-end detectors, you know, they can pretty much get their hands on a decent detector for very little outlay now. If you had plenty of alley though grain, they'd scrap it. I can't understand why. You would think so, wouldn't you? You would think that they would scrap the aluminium. So if somebody, I don't know the price of aluminium at the moment, but if somebody walked down these beaches in Furness with a detector on the sand and shingle with a bucket, and then went every day for seven days, for example, and filled the buckets up of aluminium and then weighed it in, I think they'd be pleasantly surprised how much money we'd get, because there's that much of it. It's come from somewhere. And Bill is right what he says. I remember someone telling you it had come from the welding process on the wind farms, and the Irish Sea is full. So if you go over to Walney Island, where I was born and bred, and you look out into the Irish Sea, there's hundreds and hundreds of wind turbines, right? I think the screen just went off for a second there. I hope the wind turbine companies are not going to unplug us, censor us. Now, I was told that the aluminium, the melted molten aluminium scrap that's ending up on beaches has come from the wind turbines. It's a welding process or some sort of process that's come from that. Now, wouldn't you think, right, if that was the case? We can't prove it. There'd be a way of proving it, but it'd be a costly way of proving it. But imagine if it was. You imagine the uproar. Not only did they spoil a view out into the Irish Sea that had stood there for time, thousands of years. I mean, humans have stood on Walney Beach for at least 2,000 years, because we know the Romans were there. We knew the Bronze Age people were there. So they've looked out there at least 3,000 years. And then they've spoilt that view by putting all these wind turbines and promising the people in Furness, the good people of Furness, of course, that they'll get cheap energy. After 20 years, I've still yet to see cheap energy coming through my door from the wind turbines. There you go. Load of bollocks. Well, you can say bollocks, Mel, because bollocks is just bollocks. And what's wrong with saying bollocks? I'm not saying anything. Bollocks is all right to use. Yeah.
You just like saying it.
I don't, but you're telling me it's not saying. So I know most of Walney has been used as tips, and now these are landfills are falling into the sea through erosion. And I agree. The north end of Walney was a tip. The south end of Walney was a tip, and it is leaching into the sea. However, the waste that they're finding down the coast road and into the bay, into Morecambe Bay, which isn't that a site of scientific interest, I think. Oh, it's certainly a wildlife haven. The amount of molten aluminium along that stretch of beach is unusual. And it'll only take, in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a small group of detectorists together in the spring. I don't know who this is, by the way, that's commented, but
where's it at?
It's on Facebook. But this person has commented, I can't see your name, but I'm glad you did, because what you've just done, you've set a seed in my head. I'm going to get a little group of Furness detectorists together in the springtime, and we're going to go down the beach on a Saturday or a Sunday just for a few hours, and we're going to take one of those yellow squidgy builder's buckets with us and fill, right? We're going to fill it full of aluminium scrap off the beaches, and then we're going to do a film and put it out there, okay? And somebody, right, watching it'll trigger someone's memory somewhere to say, I know what that's off. I know exactly what that waste is from. It's not off the tips, I don't think. It could be.
I think it's
It could be crystalline. Yeah, it could be off the tips. Who knows? But I don't think it is. I don't know where the melted aluminium would come from. Would it come from the tips? Would the shipyard have dumped it on Walney over the years? The plot thickens. However, it's there and it's a mess, and it's nasty. But yeah, I was told actually, Bill, and I'm glad Bill Rigby is on here actually, because Bill reminded me there that somebody at one of our digs said to me, it comes from the welding process from the wind turbines. And of course, T2 still a good machine. Yeah, absolutely, Hugh. Now, you imagine, though, the X-Terra. Now, is the X-Terra Pro going to be similar to a T2? It's a single frequency metal detector. You can change the frequencies on it, but it's going to be waterproof and wireless. Now, is it going to be as fast as the T2? Let's have a look. I sincerely hope it is. Incidentally, I had a chat with Steve Cox prior to sending my headphones, and no wonder he's frustrated. He has a coil there with no fault specified and no return address given. Absolutely. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because what we can do is gently change the subject for the next 25 minutes over to some positive stuff. Now, there's a gentleman, and Bill's touched on this now. There's a gentleman in the UK called Steve Cox. Now, Steve Cox fixes the Minelab. He's the Minelab repair centre for the UK. Now, Steve Cox really does need a medal, because he is one of the best He doesn't take any. He doesn't suffer fools, by the way. Doesn't Steve? And he's probably had his fair amount to deal with over the years. However, Steve fixes pretty much anything detector related ultra quick. So if there's anybody out there got metal detectors that have come out of the warranty that need repairing, Steve's your man. He's such. He makes mine and Melanie's life so much easier with his fast and efficient ways of fixing metal detectors that are under warranty or not under warranty. Such a good guy. Such a good guy. This is an interesting one. I would also say learn your machine. Absolutely. You know, you could spend a whole live stream session talking about metal detectors and people. So we sell metal detectors every day of the week to people that want to get out and enjoy them. Now, there's 3 or 4 different types of people that might buy metal detectors. The ones that are really into it and really want to learn that machine from top to bottom. And we'll go out pretty much 2 or 3 times a week, or if not more, to learn that detector when the weather is right. And they're usually the ones that turn out to be the best detectorists, I think, the ones that are really sort of understand the hobby and understand the machines. And then you get the ones that are sort of like into it, but they don't want to be going out all the time, but they want a detector that they can pick up, turn on, use in the fields, come home, find some nice things, talk to the wife or their husband about it, and enjoy the experience. And then you've got the really occasional ones that might only use it 3 or 4 times a year, stick it in the shed, spare bedroom, under the bed, in the loft, get it out occasionally. But when they get it out, they enjoy it. And then you get the other type that buy a detector and want instant results. Now, there is a growing number of people like this, unfortunately. There's a growing number of the 18-month experts that will tell you some really bad misinformation about detectors, actually, on social media. We had one a couple of weeks ago that was telling people to, if they didn't want to find hot rocks and coke with their particular detector, stick your notch up and notch out all hot rocks and coke and you'll be fine. And that's fine until you start coming over things like cut quarters and cut halves and find out the detector also wipes out them. So you've got the classic 18-month experts, which are growing by the day. And then you've got the people that have got absolutely no patience or perseverance levels whatsoever, that want a detector and they want instant results. And they want you to tell them exactly how to use it rather than learn it themselves. Years ago in the 80s, and even before that, we were given a paper pamphlet with maybe 8 to 10 pages full of information that we had to digest and then go off into the fields and learn. It took me, on one particular detector, which was the Toltec 100 from Tesoro, probably took me 18 months to get used to the full detector and the notch system and everything else. Nowadays, people are wanting instant results. So Melanie sold a metal detector a couple of years ago to a guy. He bought a Fisher metal detector, and he did ask the question over the phone if it would find gold. And we, of course, said, listen, if there's gold in the field, you'll find it. You're not going to find gold flakes and gold nuggets, but if there's a gold coin or a gold ring in the field, your metal detector, if you go over it or you walk over it and you're lucky enough to do that, it'll find it. However, 2 weeks went by and Mr. Impatient actually rang up and asked and demanded actually a refund, even though he'd used the metal detector 3 or 4 times and there was actually nothing wrong with it. So actually, you're not entitled to a refund. You've used the machine and there's nothing wrong with it. It hasn't got any faults. And the reason why he wanted a refund and send the metal detector back, even though he'd used it a few times, is because he'd never found gold. And unfortunately, he's not alone. There's a lot of people out there like that want instant results. And if they don't find gold, they blame the machine or they blame the person that sold them the machine. And they don't realize that it could take 10 years to walk over a gold object. Now, I know people in the hobby that have been doing it 15, 20, 25 years and never found a gold ring. I know people that have been doing it for that length of time and never found a gold coin. Gold is incredibly rare to come across at times. If you're in certain counties of this country, East Anglia, for example, your chances of finding gold or old gold is quite high. The more you do it, the more chance you've got of walking over it. You probably will at some point. if you stick in. But there's a lot of counties that you're never going to find much gold in. You might be looking to find a few gold rings on the beaches. You're not going to find, a gold hammered necessarily in some of the counties in this country, or they're quite rare. But there is people out there that will not learn a detector, and that's a problem. Instant results. That's a really good point, Suffolk Hunter. Absolutely, it's unbelievable. I can remember, I can remember the guy talking to me. I said, I don't want to be saying to him, you can't send your detector back because you haven't found gold. But how do you actually talk to these people? It's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. But that, it is what it is. You've got to tell them. Maybe going back to the metallic waste in the ocean, of course, the molten aluminium, maybe overfill on ships heading to China. You just don't know. That Morecambe Bay here sometimes has really big cargo ships go up and down it. They're not fishing vessels necessarily. There's a lot of activity. It's like a water motorway. There's a lot goes on in that bay, and there's a lot of industries linked to it. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. I bet it's residue from power plants that burn refuge. The residue is dumped. Say, absolutely, John. It could well. I'm telling you now, right? I'm going to do it. If anybody's on here is up for a day's detection, we'll go down one morning. I'll do the sheep. I'll feed my sheep, walk the dogs, have my breakfast, and we'll meet the coast road. We'll meet down the coast road. I know exactly where, about a mile or two, a stretch of beach full of this aluminium residue, as John calls it, this byproduct, and we'll fill buckets of it, and we'll show people what we're talking about, and then we'll take it to the recycling plant and weigh it in for 35 pence. But we'll do it. If anybody's up for it, give me a shout. Give me a shout. If you're up for it, we'll do it and we'll film it. Yeah, if you don't want to hit hot rocks, get a knocks. Yeah, hot rocks are a problem, aren't they? I mean, up here, it's absolutely horrendous. So I mean, I really am sorry. I really am sorry that I'm really sorry that I had to talk about people buying detectors and wanting instant results, but it's true. It's just there's just so many people saying, if I don't get results in this hobby, I'm going to blame you. Or actually, I want my money back. Or actually, it's a load of rubbish. It's easy. What do they say? The poor workman blames his tools. It's true. It's true. So there we go. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming. Brian Clark, I think it's Brian Clark who found the accent. It's got to be. I was asked by somebody if I knew anybody selling detectors who wanted to get rich quick. Well, I've been doing detecting longer than most people since 1977, and I'm not living in any mansion out in the countryside. So if I probably testify to that, you're never going to get rich selling, not selling metal detectors, using metal detectors and selling metal detectors at the same time. You just don't. You do it because you enjoy finding history. Let's have a look what else we're saying. Yeah, there's a lot of people speaking to people, which is nice, which is always nice. Second book coming on, very, very, very slow. On every live stream that I've done over the last 12 months, I'm always saying these same things. We've got a lot going on behind the scenes. At the moment, I can really say that we've got a lot going on behind the scenes. Some of it's rather frightening, some of it's exciting, and some of it's rather daunting. But there's a lot of interesting stuff in the pipeline. Me and Melanie have got quite a lot of energy. I've got quite a lot of energy, and I come up with some really interesting ideas. I don't put a lot of them to practice, but I also come up with a lot of ideas that I think we could run with. And there's one or two at the moment that we're really interested in. So the book, I'm about 1,000 words in my new book, and I haven't hit writer's block. I've got plenty of you know, I've got plenty of brain juice for it, but I just haven't got the time to sit down. I could have done a bit today, but I had to do PCI compliance on the computer all afternoon. So there you go. That's my afternoon taken by that rubbish. And UK, I love to go metal detecting, but don't drive and don't know anyone near me interested. I miss it so much. That's a shame, Annie. That is a shame. I don't really know the solution to that, really. I mean, you often see metal detectorists on push bikes, and I'm not saying that you jump on a push bike, Annie, and pedal to your permission, but if you could just get a couple of farms and landowners nearby that you could get to by, you know, relatively easily, that would get you back out into the fields. It is a shame if people miss detecting. It is a shame because everybody at some point should be given the opportunity to detect, which if you I think if you watch one of my live streams, maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, where I was saying there was opposition actually out there for people coming into the hobby. You know, there's me saying about these people that have got no patience and, you know, demand instant results and want to get rich off the back of detecting. We've also got a growing number of people that really do want to try detecting for the right reasons and want to try history. They want to try a bit of mudlarking. They want to try a bit of beach metal detecting. And I think everybody should be given the chance to have a go at detecting at least once. Whether they enjoy it or not, that's up to them. But we can't box people off, and we can't all say, listen, you know, it's an elitist hobby, actually. It's very clicky. You can't do it, but we can. That's completely wrong. It's completely wrong because we all started at somewhere. Imagine if somebody turned around to me and said, hey, guess what? I can detect because I've already been doing it 10 years, but you can't. You're a newbie. Can't do it. We don't want to be seen as elitism. Everybody should be, excuse me, given the chance to detect at least once. You've tried, Anne. Whereabouts are you based, Annie? Am I going to say Scotland? Oh, no, Bradford. Right. Why did I think Scotland? Bradford, West Yorkshire. I'm sure, right? I'm sure, Annie, there'll be somebody in the Bradford, West Yorkshire area that would, oh, so you've got to be careful, haven't you? I think there'll be somebody somewhere that would help, but I wouldn't want you to be vulnerable and taking up an offer from a stranger to go out for a day's detecting, because you've also got to worry about that, haven't you, nowadays? So it'd be somebody that we'd probably have to know and trust that would be willing to take you out detecting with them. And then maybe if you've got permission, you could do a bit of sharing, because it seems to me to be such a shame that you've lost your opportunity to detect. And, you know, West Yorkshire is a really fantastic base to spread out into South Yorkshire, North Lincolnshire, etc., etc. So there's some really good areas around you within that hour's drive. And of course, Dave Taylor there. Look at that. I know Dave Taylor personally from Yorkshire. If you can get on a dig, sorry, I've knocked you off, Dave. If you can get on a dig, I travel up from Castleford. So what I'd have to work out is, or you'll have to work out, is Castleford north of Bradford, which I think it is, but Dave will put me right. You'd have to sort of work out whether or not it would work. You know, I mean, there you go, Annie. If you can get on a dig, I travel up from Castleford. Al Plevy, good to see you, Al. I have taken people onto my permission as they don't have permissions of their own, but have got a detector. Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of people out there that have got their own detectors, and they're just willing to get out there and find some good stuff. But what they want to do is, you know, they'll take any opportunity they can to jump out and get onto some good land. I mean, and if somebody like you, Alan, that's got permission, and you're willing to take people on that you trust, by the way, and they're not going to make a mess. You've got to be saluted for that sort of effort. Really, I think it's nice for people to take others onto their permissions and not have that mentality where you can come detecting with us, like it's happened in the past with people that we know, where they've took people on farms in the past and that particular person's found, say, a hammered coin and never got an invite back. You know, there's a lot of strange people in the hobby, unfortunately. So if you can get to South Yorkshire, you're more than welcome to bob along. There you go. I mean, Andrew Allen, great guy, one of the nicest fellas you'll ever meet. You know what I'm saying there is, Annie, there's people there, Annie, right on your doorstep almost, that would be willing to go along for a day's detecting. I can go through Bradford up to the Dales to the M6. There you go. So I don't know if you're still watching, Annie, but there's some offers coming through, and I know these people. I can personally vouch for them. Dave Taylor, really nice fella. Andrew Allen, really nice fella. We'll go on to Bill Leyland. Just reposting, but regarding the price of detectors today, in the early 1990s, I paid £350 for a C-Scope 4ZX. Was a lot of money back then, Bill. And I remember buying a Fisher 1266 in I was still living with my mum and dad, so it would have been 1987, 88. And I'm sure that was about £400 or £500. So, you know, you look at the prices of today from the prices of detectors in the past, pretty good. Pretty good. The argument sways then, you see. Now, Annie's asking for details of the people that have offered her the opportunity to get out detecting. So you're talking like Andrew Allen, and you're talking also Dave Taylor. So, you know, between you people, there'll be a way of maybe dropping somebody an email, whatever it might be. I know they would do the same for me if the roles were reversed. Absolutely, Al. Yeah, which is nice. I found a great find on someone's permission. It wasn't, and I wasn't invited back. Still love my dad though, which is funny, right? But I've seen it happen to many people actually when they've invited somebody out onto their land. The invited person finds something really good, and then that friendship almost stops at that point, because in detecting, we're not all good guys like we are on here. On the other side of the coin, there's some very, almost jealous and envious people in the hobby that want to find everything and don't like anybody finding anything. They're almost in it for a competition. Believe me, they're out there. So there you go. Annie is asking for contact details. I don't know how you're going to sort that out, but I'm pretty sure you can. But another good example of how many good people are out there in the hobby willing to help people like Annie get out detecting for at least a session or two and enjoy the experience. As long as you're not going to be a crazy stalker, Annie, to these people, I think you'll be absolutely fine. All jokes aside, there will be a way of contacting. I spoke to Shrewsbury Museum last week. My hoard will hopefully be on display in the next couple of months. That's good news. That is good news. And then I no doubt that you'll be going down there to sign your autographs to the people that are viewing your hoard, Darren, I guess. Right. Okay. So this is from Andrew Allen to Annie. Send me a PM on Facebook. Should be able to find my random wafflings and posts on the Unearthed page. There you go. So there you go, Annie. Andrew Allen on Facebook. You just have to look for some detecting related stuff on his Facebook page or on his Facebook profile, and you will hopefully get in touch. And you both sound like really nice people to each other, and I know for a fact that Andrew Allen is, because he's a customer and a friend of ours. So you're in the right hands. Rob Jones, happened to me, found gold and never got invited back. I mean, it does happen. It does happen. People get really sort of irate about people finding stuff that, I mean, every dog has its day. That was your day to find that piece of gold, not theirs. They've probably had their chance. And they will do in the future. So, Andrew, Annie's thanking you. So there you go. What a nice ending to a rather dour and disturbing live stream. I'm afraid it was a very dark and dismal live stream talking about the waste and things, but that's a nice ending to it because we've only got about 5 to 10 minutes left. So if there's anybody got any questions now is the time to do it. Give us the thumbs up on YouTube and Facebook if you can, guys. That would be helpful. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, I would suggest that you do it If you can, just drop us a sub, and you can also click the notification button, because the Unearthed YouTube channel, as you are seeing, is growing and growing, and there's a lot of good stuff coming to the Unearthed YouTube channel. And we've also got the membership side growing quite a lot, so that comes with a lot of perks. If people want to join the YouTube Unearthed membership, there'll be a lot of information on there. There's merchandise to get. There's discount. You get discount off stuff if you become an Unearthed member on YouTube. What else can I talk about? Really, we're almost disappearing, aren't we? We've got 5 minutes left. That was good to get the lads out, Graham. Yeah, I know. I think Annie's going to enjoy it. I think Annie will enjoy the experience. Andrew Allen's a great guy. Finds some great stuff as well. So there you go. Good job. Where we at? There you go, Mr. Johnson. See you soon, my friend. Hope you're well. Jamie Dodger is asking me, where did I get those glasses from? I'm not sure, mate, where I got them from. I probably got them from... I might have got them from some of my detecting buddies that have lent me them. Because my eyesight now, I've got into my 50s, is starting to deteriorate. And the reason why is because I'm always staring at screens. I'm staring at screens. These are the screens that I'm staring at. Computer, metal detecting screen, mobile phone screen, and car screen. So your eyes are going to get fried by staring at all those screens. What we're going to do now, we're going to get Bill Leyland going back to green waste problem. Did Bob Russell, the MP, raise the problem in Parliament? He did, and he was right up for it. It makes you wonder, Bill, what had happened behind the scenes, right? What had happened behind the scenes for him to keep his mouth shut, because he didn't want to open a can of worms, Bill. That's probably what it was. You know what these people are like. You know what these MPs are like. These MPs are very good at speaking about certain things on their soapbox, but when they get put under pressure, no matter what political party they're from, whether they're Lib Dems, Tories, or Labour, they're all pretty much useless about being put under pressure. Regardless, I've worked with them all. I know exactly how they work and how they operate. They're all hopeless, pretty much. So he went there with best intentions, and then it all went quiet because he didn't probably think there was a problem, or he was told that there isn't a problem. So we've got Al Plevy. If you want a beachcomb, yeah, no problem, Al. You know, we'll get a small group of people together. Maybe, I don't know, half a dozen of us. We'll get a couple of them buckets and let's fill them up. I mean, you know, we've got to remember, we've got to have that mentality that we're out there detecting for aluminium waste on the beaches to prove it's there, which it is. It's tons of it. And we'll show them it. And we'll show them it. So we're not out to find coins and artifacts. We'll get them all in these buckets. Good luck, Hugh, with Antiques Roadshow. There you go. Antiques Roadshow. I don't enjoy watching that anymore. I don't know why. I don't know why I don't enjoy watching it. I just don't seem to watch it. They all pee in the same pot, Bill. You're right. They do. They do. And here's another one before we disappear, folks, as well. I did get a little bit of flack way back in January about not being as active on social media. So some people were posting things up and asking, or messaging me, asking me certain things, and I wasn't replying. The reason why I don't reply is because I probably don't see them, or I haven't got the time to see them. I'm out on organised digs. I'm detecting. I might be doing something with the sheep. I might be doing something somewhere else, bit of fishing or whatever it might be. So I did get a bit of criticism for not answering some questions on social media. But you've got to remember, folks, there's only one of me. There's not 10. And I don't want to sound ignorant when I don't reply to some people's posts on, say, Facebook, for example, or Instagram or YouTube. Try my very, very best to comment to everybody. But if it's a 24-hour lapse, people get frustrated and start kicking off a little bit. So I do apologise for that, but I can't do everything all at once. Yeah, Bill says it. Bill says it as it is. You know, you've got to give Billy's due. He's one of the greatest men that ever lived. Is Bill Leyland. If you ever meet him, you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. Right, folks. Good to see you all tonight. We had quite a lot of viewers. I don't know what the next live stream is going to bring, whether it's going to be me waking up with a horse's head on my pillow. But we are now opening the door of the problem of green waste. whether we like it or not, we're down the road of it now. So let's see what this conference meeting brings. Will I be told to keep quiet? There you go. Right, folks, just remember, stay cool. If anybody needs me for anything, drop me an email or a message, and I'll try my best to answer you, unlike January. Okay, bye for now, folks. Take care.